welcome to another episode of the Six Figure Vet podcast, where we showcase success stories of Black veterans that have successfully unlaced the boots. Please be sure to like, comment, subscribe to the Six Figure Vet podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Now, we are back with another powerful episode, and this time we're honored to welcome Dr. Eric Mansfield. He is a veteran surgeon, leader, and, but not last, a man of faith. Dr. Mansfield's journey is one of excellence, resilience, and service. A proud Howard University, HU, because you know, graduate with a degree in chemistry. He went on to earn his Doctor of Medicine from Morehouse School of Medicine in 1991, where he was recognized for his commitment to family practice. His passion for surgery led him to Tulane University, where he not only sharpened his skills, but also earned multiple awards, including Intern of the Year and Teaching Resident of the Year. His dedication to service did not stop there. Dr. Mansfield answered the call to serve as a medical officer in the United States Army, stationed at Fort Bragg. Following his military service, he completed his otolaryngology residency, rising to the chief residence and later earning his board certification as an otolaryngology head and neck surgeon. But Dr. Mansfield's impact extends beyond medicine. He stepped into the world of leadership and advocacy as a North Carolina state senator representing Cumberland County. His commitment to uplifting and empowering his community is unwavering. And if you follow him on Instagram, you already know his thoughtful and anointed prayers are a true source of wisdom and encouragement. Please, please, please give Dr. Eric Mansfield a warm six-figure vet welcome. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. That's very kind. Your words are very kind.
Of course. Of course. So we like to start off every episode with a mental health check-in. So how are you, Mr. Eric?
I'm great. I'm great. I just been operating all day, and so it's been a good day. It's been
good. Good. So what type of headspace do you have to go into the hospital with when you know you are operating?
Hopefully clear. You want to just be
Important.
clear. And I always try to go in and just, thankful and just seeing that there are a lot of people who are sick, and I'm just as a conduit for God to use to help them get better. And
Yes.
so I'm always just really excited and happy, so I can try to bring that excitement and happiness to other people, because other people are already sick. And so if you're walking in depressed and not doing well, you're not helping them. And so
No,
I'm just always thankful. And also, you can also be in the other side of the table, right?
very true.
God could use so many different people. I'm just thankful that He still wants to use me. So.
Yes,
very
that's
thankful.
beautiful. And I love how, in the world of medicine, sometimes your faith can kind of be taboo because you are surrounded by so many just facts and just science. But I love the fact that you take the approach in your profession of still being a servant to God. Even though you've been through all this extensive training and school and all the things, right? You still consider yourself a servant and doing something that is, beneficial to the kingdom. I think that is so beautiful.
Oh yeah, well, if you read, he says, the Lord says, "Servant, well done." He never says, "Doctor, well done," or "Preacher, well done," or "Pastor, well done," or "Lawyer." He says, "Servant." And so,
Yes.
the highest calling on earth and the highest occupation is to be a servant. The titles and things are stuff that we make up to distinguish, but to God, the most important thing is to be a servant. And so, I think all of us should be servant leaders, and be servants first and leaders second.
Yes.
And so I think medicine is an extension of that service. Luke, the book of Luke and the book of Acts in the Bible are both written by a physician. And so,
Yes.
it is believed that Luke was Paul's personal physician, that Paul had an eye problem from the Damascus Road incident. And from that eye problem, he continued to have it. And so he was looking for a physician. He went to one city and didn't find him, went to another city, Troas, found Luke. And Luke listened to Paul talk about Jesus and got so compelled that he stayed with him for the rest of his life.
How amazing is that? And yes, I did know, that Luke was a physician, but I did not know the backstory. I did not know that Paul ended up having a condition after he was blinded after his encounter with Jesus on the road to Damascus. So
Yeah,
that is definitely something that it ties it all in together, if it
yeah,
makes sense. It
yeah.
definitely ties it all in together. So let's get some backstory, Mr. Eric. Let's get some backstory before the medicine, before the military, before your activism and the politics. Who is Eric Mansfield growing up as a child? Give me some backstory. Give me your history.
Just regular Southern kid. I grew up in Columbus, Georgia. My dad died when I was 10, and so my dad was in the Army. He was a helicopter pilot for the first Cav in Vietnam, 3 tours, and
Oh wow.
uh, was stationed at Fort Benning. Excuse me, and then I went up to the Pentagon and was working as a Pentagon. And just before he got promoted to colonel, he had a heart attack and died. And so when that happened, he was, very young. He was 41 when it happened.
Yeah. Wow. That is extremely young.
So my mom, being from Phoenix City, Alabama, moved back to Columbus, Georgia, which is the city right across the river, Chattahoochee River, and then I grew up there, with a mom who tried to take care of 2 kids and steer them in the right direction. I had a large extended family on my dad's side, obviously, back in Louisiana. So I'm just a typical bad kid who was doing stuff like all typical kids would be doing, And I was just very thankful that I always had people, male and female women in my life who kind of kept me out of bad trouble.
Yes. Yes. Just a little mischievous trouble. Nothing too crazy.
No, I was actually fortunate that the bad trouble, people stopped me before I got into it.
Yeah. And growing up in the rural South, especially like Columbus, Georgia and Alabama, it's not hard for it to find you.
Right.
It's
Yeah. Yeah.
extremely easy for it to find you. And sometimes you don't got to go looking for it. Sometimes it literally just knocks on your front door. And
Sure.
we've seen that so many times
Sure.
happen in the Black community with
Sure.
rising stars, with
Sure.
super intelligent young men where trouble just kind of finds them. So it is such a blessing that, you had the role models that you had during your upbringing to kind of guide you on that path. So where have you always wanted to get into medicine? Where did medicine come from?
I think I actually saw my dad die.
Oh wow.
And so that always stuck with me, and I always wondered if I could have done something. I wish I could have known. I was 10 years old, so it wasn't
It
anything I
wasn't
could
much you
really
could
do.
have done.
But I carried that for a long time. If maybe if I had known more, if I could have done more, and so that was my initial push to go into medicine. And then I went to Howard, and I kind of got into politics while I was at Howard, and just got into a lot of stuff at Howard. I applied to medical school and law school because I wasn't sure what I wanted to do.
Oh wow.
So
You
yeah,
applied to both medical and law school.
yeah, yeah. And so I just told God, I said, hey, whatever school accepts me first, that's the school I'm gonna go to. And so I know it doesn't make any sense now, but about a couple of weeks later, I got a letter from Morehouse School of Medicine saying congratulations, you've been accepted. And that's how I picked. And to me, it's the best choice that I made, but it's really God pushed me in that direction.
Yes.
So
Yes. And look how God works and what a full circle moment it is. Not to get into the deets too early, but you end up being a senator. You end up still getting into politics later on in your career. So you had the best of both worlds.
I did. I actually did. Yeah, it worked out just like he wanted it to.
Exactly. Exactly. So you are a Howard University man and a Morehouse man.
Yes.
Why was attending a HBCU so pertinent to you? You could have probably went to, if you applied for both medical and law school and just kind of like, whichever one. I know that your grades were good enough to probably
Uh,
get into any school you wanted to. So why was attending a HBCU so important?
well, when I was a little boy, my mom was a school teacher, and so she would bring home books, and all the black people in the books were from Howard, or they were Andrew Young and Thurgood Marshall, and they'd all gone to Howard, either
Mm-hmm.
Howard Law School, Howard Medical School, Howard undergrad, and so I just had it in my head from that time, but I got to go to Howard. Like I applied to other schools, and I got into them, but in my mind, I felt like that's where I was supposed to go. That like something was drawing me. I had to go to Howard, and so, and I didn't really know anything about it except what I read in the books. And once I got there, I mean, it's it's like all HBCUs. There's some fantastic things about it, and then there's some things you're like, it's frustrating.
Yes.
But I had a great experience. I learned a lot. It was good to see other Black people who were doing great things. As iron sharpens iron. So I met some just fantastic students who were way smarter than I was, and that's a great thing. It's a great thing to be able to see people
Yes.
who look like you, understand you, and who are smarter than you. But at the same time, I go into my physics class. My physics professor is Black. I go to my chemistry class. My chemistry professor is Black. And
Yes.
so it's not denigrating white or predominantly white institutions, but there's something that is psychic. Not I shouldn't say psychic. It is something that is heart developing and
Very
gives
much
you
so.
a strong consciousness that
Yes.
once you see it, you then believe you can do it.
Yes.
So, I grew up in Columbus where I had never seen Black professors.
Mm.
We had one Black physician in town, right? And so when you go and you start seeing people that look just like you, talk just like you, but they're doing things at a super high level, then
Yes.
all of a sudden you start going, I gotta up my game. I gotta
Yeah.
get
Or
my
maybe
mess together.
I can do that too.
Exactly right. And so that's inspired me even further. So I wound up at Morehouse, and I went to Morehouse because it was close to Columbus, close to home, and they also gave me money, so
Because that matters.
it
Speaking
totally
of,
took a bit.
giving you money, I want to talk about your first, probably, well, not your first encounter, but one of your earlier encounters with having to be resiliency. Sophomore year in high school, I did a little digging and I found out, your mom kind of came to you and was like, Eric, I ain't got no money for you to go to school now.
Right, right, right. Well, my mom was a very strong, as you know, very strong Southern Black woman, like very,
Yeah.
very strong. And so my mom, she's just very honest. She's extremely honest. Times, it's a little bit too honest. And so, my mom's one of those people like, hey, you don't need to eat that cake. You're gaining weight. She's one of those kind of people. You're like, seriously?
And I'm pretty sure that's not how she said it.
Yeah, right, right. No, no. And so she's just kind of sat me down and said, "Hey, look, you have three options." She said, "You can go to the military, you can go get a job, you can go to college." And she said, "But understand, none of those three things mean that you'll be living in my house after you graduate." I was like, I was like 15 or 16. I was like, "Huh? What do you mean? I'm not. I thought I was living here forever, right?" And so they kind of put in my head, dude, you better figure out what you're
You
going
better
to
make some shake.
yeah. And so I was in ROTC in high school, and there was a sergeant, and I say this that all the time. There are God ordained people that He will put in your pathway to get you to a level that you don't know how to get to. And
Yes.
so there's this retired Sergeant Forsyth, who was a white guy, and he said, "I see something in you." And he filled out my ROTC packet without me knowing it.
Oh,
Right.
wow.
So he filled out the entire thing, like got my grades. I mean, that was back in the day where, they could, teachers could do almost anything.
Yeah.
My grades, got my transcripts, got everything. And so I got a letter saying, "Hey, we got your application. Everything's finished, and we'll let you know." And I'm like, "Well, what application? Because I never filled out
Right.
one." And so, he told me and said, "Hey, I feel like I see something in you, and you don't need to be in Columbus. You need to go somewhere else."
Yeah.
And so I got the scholarship, and then I went on to Howard. And it was really, had I not gotten that scholarship, I probably would have. I mean, I had a scholarship at University of Georgia, but I didn't want to go to University of Georgia. Um, so he really paved the way for me to be what I am right now.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And definitely God ordained people. There's, being in the military or just being in certain environments where you're not familiar,
Yep.
being away from home, all the way in Howard, all the way at Howard in DC. Like you stated, we're both we both have Alabama roots, y'all.
Yes.
So so, that was my first time experiencing Black excellence, as I would like to call it. Most of the people I know, they either lived in like, trailers,
Yes.
double wides, worked
Mm.
at plants, factories, but
Right.
seeing Black homeowners, seeing Black millionaires,
Right.
seeing just Black success, it was all foreign to me. But I had being stationed in Maryland, I had people there that I met through the military and just like networking that took me in and really took really good care of me. And I don't know where I would be in my career or how the trajectory of my life would have played out if God didn't place those people in my life.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, I agree with that.
So most definitely. So you go to Howard, you come back. You go to Howard on a scholarship,
Right.
right? Then you decide you play any meeny miny mo with law school and medical school.
Right.
Then you end up at Morehouse. So what was after Morehouse? This is Fort Bragg after Morehouse, if I'm
No,
not
no. So what
mistaken.
happens after you finish your medical school? You didn't have to go to residency because then
Yes.
you just finish as a medical doctor, not actually you're not in a specialty. And
Yes.
so I was fortunate to become an ear, nose, and throat surgeon. I was actually the first Morehouse graduate to ever become an ear, nose, and throat surgeon. And so it was quite again God again, and it was this was me being an ENT is 100% God because I wanted to do psychiatry. Like I just knew I wanted to be a psychiatrist. I was going to go back to our community and take care of kids and do the whole thing. And then I
Oh,
did psychiatry and I hated it. I hated it. I mean, I hated it so bad that I mean, it was horrible. And so I was a fourth year medical student in the summer and I didn't know what I wanted to do. I got good grades in surgery, but the surgeons were just mean and not nice people. And I didn't want to be that. And I didn't want to be around that.
mm-hmm.
And so I was at a rotation and I was looking at the board and I was like, oh, I wonder what that is. So I go into this room and it's a black ENT doctor. And Dr. Jones is doing surgery and he asked me all these questions and I answer all the questions. And he's like, God, you know a lot about ENT. I was like, I don't even know what ENT is. And so he explains to me what ENT is, and I'm like, oh, okay. And he says, if you're ever interested in ENT, I'll write you a letter. And I go, okay. And so the next time, I go home and I'm like, yeah, I could do that. So I call him the next day and say, hey, I want to do ENT. Can you write me a letter? I understand. I don't know anything about ENT. I just know him, right? And
Let's hear.
so I applied to the residencies, and residencies they have to invite you. So I get all these interviews, and they keep saying, "Well, how do you know Herb Jones? How do you know Herb Jones?" And I go, "Oh, I met him in the operating room." They go, "Okay." And so I go to these interviews, and it wasn't to the last interview at Emory where the chairman of the ENT department says, "Do you know Herb Jones is the national secretary of the ENTs?" And I was like, "What?"
That's why everybody like, how did you get a
Exactly.
recommendation?
And so I pick up the telephone and I say, Dr. Jones, how come you didn't tell me that you were the national secretary? And he'd go, well, it never came up. And I was like, you could have clued me in a little bit. But because of that letter from him, and this is I mean, okay, if I don't go in in his operating room, I never meet him. If I never
Yeah.
meet him, I never get the letter. I never get the
Nope.
letter. I don't get accepted to a residency.
Oh,
If I don't get accepted to residency, my life is a completely different life.
mhm.
And so again, it's
It's the
just
small
very
thing.
small things, right? Very, very small things. And so I get in residency, and so the state of Louisiana had only trained one other black ENT in the history of the state of Louisiana. I was the second one, and it was just a lot of hard work. And again, you're in a situation where you can't make excuses. Like
Yeah.
you have to rise up to whatever the level of excellence is, and then take it one more level.
Yeah.
So I always tell my students and my medical students and residents that you want to be the smartest person in the room and not be embarrassed by it, because
Yeah.
there's always this stigma, particularly among African Americans, that you don't want to be the smartest person in the room, or if you are the smartest person in the room, you want to act
You
like
in
you're
the
not. Which because someone else has insecurity, their insecurity has nothing to do with my excellence. So if you
yes.
want to be insecure because of my excellence, that's your problem. That ain't my problem. Because the way I look at it, and then I tell my students, is that if your mom and dad get sick, who do you want operating your dad? The smartest person in the room,
The
right?
smartest person in
And
the
that's the
room. The
same thing
best
with
you got.
anything in business. In anything in business, who do you want running your business? The smartest person in the room. And so it is incumbent upon us, and I know that we hear this all the time, you got to be twice as good, three times as good. That's not old school. That is the school that we always want to be the smartest, the most well read. We always want to be thinking ahead. So I tell them that you want to work at 1 year level above where you are. So if you're an
Yes.
intern, you want to work as a second year. If you're a second year, you want to work as a third year. And if you're a fourth year or fifth year, you want to work as a chief. Like, you want to be challenging the staff. You want to be talking to your professors like, hey, is that really true? Because I read this. That's at the level you want to be. Because
Yes.
when you start with that excellence, people will come find you. That is one of the things I learned. I mean, one of the things in this story when I was a chief resident, Louisiana is still not a great state. And so, and I was born there, so I can say this.
Right.
And I love Louisiana, but Louisiana, we don't put our money where it should be. And so there was this guy who had a cancer. He was a white guy from South Louisiana, and it's just, I get it. That's not who he grew up with. And here's this young black guy walking in who's going to operate on him. And so when I walk out of the
You
room,
like,
yeah, when I walk out of the room, the nurse is like, you can go in, and he tells the nurse, I ain't letting him operate on me. And so so she so she stopped, and she's from South Louisiana. And she's like, if he doesn't operate on you, what the next person that's gonna operate on you, you don't want to operate on you. She's like, that guy, he's the best guy in this hospital. And if he doesn't operate on you, it's not gonna you don't want the next person. And so she came out and told me what happened. I was like, I'm not operating on him. And then she was like, so then she was like, oh, so you're gonna be just like him. And I was like,
ooh,
I was, "Ooh," I felt that big. And I was like, no. She said, you're not called to address people's racism. You're called to address his cancer. Now
mm,
you pick which one you're gonna do. And I was like, stop.
ooh,
And so she goes back in his room. She's like, have you made your decision? And he was like, well, I'm gonna go with the person you say is the best. She says, I'm telling you, this is the best guy. And so the other thing I tell my residents is, particularly my brown and black and definitely female residents, I said, be so great, be so smart, be so excellent that people have to make a conscious decision to be a racist or a sexist, or they have to say, I just got to get a guy a job. Like, you have to
yeah,
be so good that they go, okay.
it's undeniable.
Like, they have to sit there and physically go, God, okay, fine. She gets the job. Like, they have to do that. Or they have to admit to themselves, well, I'm not giving this person a job because they're black. Well, I'm not giving this
Yeah,
person because they're a woman. And that's a decision that they still can make, but you want to force them. You don't want to give them the room like, well, they're not as good, right? So we should always be the best person. Right?
yeah.
We should always force the conversation. We should always force a decision. So then after residency, you then get out. And then that's when I went into the army.
Okay. So
Yeah.
this is where you were in something with infantry. You were a medical officer, of course, but
Yeah,
for
yeah,
an
yeah.
infantry unit.
Yeah, I was in the second of the '05 of the 82nd Airborne, actually. And so I was the second of the 505th Parachute Infantry Regiment of the 82nd Airborne Division.
Did that have anything to do with ENT?
Most times, no. Most times, no. And so, but what they do is that where there's the needs of the Army. So where there's a
Mm-hmm.
need, you go. I had a great unit. And actually, my battalion commander became Secretary of Defense, General Austin. And so we got deployed. We did some battlefield surgeries. We
Oh
operated.
wow.
Did and we just the entire unit just got an award 25 years later for and it's really not my award. It's really the my medical group's award. But we were sent to operate on an Albanian general who had stepped on a landmine and walked a couple kilometers afterwards. And so we go into this cave that's lit by candles, right? And so this guy, and it's just going to be a little graphic, so if people want to turn off, they can. But we're sitting there, and he has all of his people with AK-47s, and here we are coming in with our M4, and they're looking, we're looking, and I'm looking at the guy's leg, and I'm like, man, it looks like a beehive. It looks like it's moving. And I kept looking at it, and so we finally walk over to it, and he has so many maggots on his leg that like a beehive is moving that much. And so first, we get an IV in, we give him some morphine to kind of stop the pain,
Yeah.
and we're trying to just really trying to get the maggots off. If we can get the maggots off, I can kind of see,
What's going on?
but he was kind of going, and it was just not going well. And so I wound up doing doing a kind of a battlefield amputation, just so we could get the maggots out and stop the infection.
All of this is in a cave.
This
There's
is
no
all in the
like
case.
handles.
And so we get them fixed up, and and I'm sure everybody who's been deployed, this next part they all know. We do what we're told to do. We're bringing them back to the unit, and there's a side story which I'm not going to put on the internet, but we get to the gate, and the our particular commander at the time was like, "You can't bring him on the base," and I was like, "Whoa, wait a minute! You sent us out to get this guy,
And
and
now
now."
he ain't.
Right. And so then he was like, "Well, we don't really have orders and to allow him to come on the base. And the rules of engagement are such that." And I was like, "Sir, you can court martial me, but he's coming on the base." And so it was a little bit of a standoff, and we wound up getting him on the base. And then the BBC found out. And once the BBC found out, the unit, not us personally, but the unit was seen as heroes, which made our commander seem as a hero. So of
Right.
course, at that point, oh yeah, it was my idea to
Of
bring him on the
course.
base to make sure. And I remember because we were doing our thing, and we were watching him being interviewed. And when he said that, like all of us just stopped and were like, "Really? Is that how that story's gonna
Almost
be?"
got court martial. Now you want to take the credit?
So I started laughing. But I mean, our unit we just got the award 25 years later. And it was
That's
really because
amazing.
of the Secretary of Defense heard what happened, found out that we didn't get the award, and gave us an award. And I'm proud of the guys because they were really great. We were in a not a great situation. And again, for those of us in the military, the intelligence wasn't intelligent, and so we were in harm's way. But I mean, I'm proud of the guys because they did such a great job to help this guy. We never saw him again, but from our understanding, he went on the launch stool and then wound up getting a real amputation, and came back to Albania. So
Wow.
I had a great time in the army. I have no real problems with the army. I mean, obviously there are always people in the army that you're like,
Yeah, of course.
they're always, there's always a lieutenant or a lieutenant colonel or somebody who's like, you're like, "Ugh, seriously?" But
Every time.
right. But for the most part, they're fantastic people who care about their country, people who want to work, they work hard for their country.
So was it your plan? So once you got to Fort Bragg and was it always like, okay, I'm just gonna do this tour and then I'm out, or
Yeah.
did you kind of like battle back and forth like, maybe I could do
Well,
this for a little longer?
yeah, once I got into the army, I really loved it. I mean, I loved the people I worked with. I was able to work with some great units. I worked with some people in civil affairs who were just outrageously funny, and just great people. But the one thing that I felt when we were deployed in this particular area, I felt like that I wasn't in control of my own life. That there was
Hmm.
some little Needlemeyer guy in Washington who was sitting there going, Mansfield, he should go here. No discussion, no nothing. And then you go back to, and Bragg is such a high tempo fort that you just get orders like out of nowhere. They're like, poof, you need to go here. And you're attached to this unit. And so I felt like, I mean, I think, and all the folks who have been multiple deployments, I mean, they get it. And this was before multiple deployments, but I was in for 4 years. I think I was deployed like 30 months out of 48 months. And so, and there was different places. I mean, there wasn't one place I was at a bunch of different
So
places.
you're moving
So,
around.
yeah. And so between TDYs and deployments and field problems and JRTC and all that crap. So I shouldn't say that. All that kind of stuff. Uh, field training
It
problems.
ain't fun when you going
No,
through it.
no,
Okay,
it's
it
not. It
is
sucks, right?
not the
And especially
glamour.
JRTC. But I just felt like I wasn't in control of my life, and I
Yeah.
felt that I would rather get out, be able to control my own life, and go forward, even though I really enjoyed it.
So you joining the military and exiting. This is a story of while you were in, or maybe while you were in, but I know when I was in, you hear a lot from people that look like us, especially from people that look like us. I would get pulled to the side all the time, like, listen, LS2, get what you can get and get out.
Right.
Use the military for all that it can provide you, whether it's experiences, whether it's college, whether it's
Right.
education. networking opportunities, do that. And you were blessed enough to be able to do that within the 4 years you were in, right? During that 48-month deployment, but also before with the scholarship.
Right. Yeah. 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 No, I like I said, I don't have any trouble with the U.S. Army. The U.S. Army was very good to me.
Yes.
But what I could also see, and particularly at Bragg, and I'm sure at other high tempo bases, is that it's almost like sports. It's like it's if what have you done for me today?
For
Like
today. Yes.
if you tweaked your knee, if you tweaked your ankle, if you messed up your back, you could have been there 18 years, and all of a sudden you were not favorably looked upon.
Yes.
I would say that in one instance, yes, get as much from the military as you can as far as education because you get the opportunity to get that. But at some point, they're going to ask for it back, and
Mhm.
they're going to want it. And I had I had a very, very small, I had a very short understanding for people who took benefits from the military and then complained when they were sent somewhere. Because
Yeah.
I'm like, wait, that's how it works. That's what
Yeah,
we
it's
do.
just yeah.
We're the army. This is what we do. And if you're gonna take a benefit and it says you gotta do 2 years, do your 2 years, do it honorably and shut up. Right?
Yeah.
Your 2 years, get out. But while you're there, don't complain with the very system that allowed you to get the opportunity to do it. Now,
Exactly.
understanding that still within that there are some things that
Things that
we as an army need to do better. No doubt
as
about it.
the DOD in general, not even just
DOD
the
in
army.
general, right, right. DOD in general, but definitely as far as taking care of our troops, particularly injured troops, mental health troops, we don't do the best job, and
Mhm.
it's also sometimes dependent on who the first sergeant is, and who's the captain, and who's the colonel, and so but my experience was good. And I think for some people, it is the best fit for them. It is
Yeah,
a great fit for them because they need it. They need the structure,
the
uh,
structure.
and it works well for them. But for me, I knew that I love it and I love the structure and I love being in it. But I also felt like there was something different for me to do.
Mhm. And that's okay. I think that's another great point to you. And I hate to use the word use, but some things in your life are stepping stones.
Yeah, yeah,
Right? And that's okay. And
right,
some things you're in that season for a moment. Take as much as you can, learn as much as you
right,
can while you're in their season, but know when it's time to gracefully bow out. And a
right,
lot of the successful veterans, especially the African Americans or Black veterans that I know, they didn't complete 20 years and they're still doing amazing things. So knowing when to pivot, knowing
sure,
when, okay, maybe this isn't the assignment that God wants for me long term,
right.
and
And
that's
yeah,
okay.
yeah, yes, that's totally okay. But what I would also say, and when I was in, I remember I was always tell the young lieutenants and the young captains, I would say, hey, look, if you already know of kind of figuring this is not where you want to be long term, then you need to be getting ready now, which means you need to have an education that's beyond where you are right now.
Yes.
And I would also tell, my folks who are who are in college, if you can get a mo get a job that there is a civilian correlation,
Yes.
right? Because being 11 brought me being infantry, there is no civilian. I mean, there are, but there's not ones that we want to be in, right?
Yeah.
And being a contractor in a foreign land, you don't want to do that for the rest of your life.
Mm-mm.
So try to find something because when it comes to communications, the Army has some of the best communication equipment in the world. When it comes
Mhm.
to computers, they have some of the best servers. They have some of the best cloud software. When it comes to security,
Mhm.
particularly cybersecurity, we do it as well as anywhere else. If I didn't know what I wanted to do, I would definitely go in those fields in the military because
Yeah.
as soon as you get out, they're gonna get you a job.
Definitely. Definitely be strategic with the rate that you pick. That is definitely important. So, after you leave how did you get into politics? How did you get into, becoming a senator and just doing all the things that you did for your community? How did
Well,
that even come about?
I've all I feel like that you should always give back. I think that is, to me, it is incumbent upon every single person, excuse me, that if you get blessed, that it is automatically that you should give back, right? And particularly for those of us who grew up poor. Like for those of us who
Yeah.
grew up poor, we know what it's like. We know how it feels to walk in stores and people like dismiss you. We know how it is to be in schools where the teachers don't really listen to you.
Mm-hmm.
And so we know that struggle. We know the struggle of what that's like. Sometimes not even eating as much as you want, or your mom buy you clothes for the beginning of the year, and you're wearing those same clothes at the end of
May.
the year. Yeah, in May, but you may have grown 3 inches, right? It's
Right.
still, your mom's like, they still clean. You're like, they don't fit, right? Like, come on, mom, man, you're killing me, right?
High waters, baby.
Exactly, man. Everybody laughing at you. But your mom was like, they clean. You're like, that's the least of my worries are being clean. And so I always had a heart, and you see patients come in,
Mhm.
and I see students, and so I had a heart to always help, to always give, to always make sure that other people get the same opportunity, same access. And so when Obama was running, I gotten pretty cynical about politics because I just felt like, people were in it for themselves.
Yeah.
Then during that campaign, I saw how all different types of people, poor, wealthy, white, black, Latino, like all different walks of life came together to support. I said, this is really how it should be. This is how politics should be.
Yes.
And so the person that we had as senator, so we put together a thing with the President Obama. He was Senator Obama at the time. We actually put together in Fayetteville. And it was really, again, God again. A friend of mine called me from Mississippi, said, hey, I got this guy. He can come to Fayetteville. He needs a place to stay. Could you hold him up for a minute and then he'll find something? I said, oh, yeah, sure, fine. He gets to our house. He gets a call from Chicago. Hey, Senator Obama's coming. He wants to make a speech in Fayetteville. Do you have somebody who can help you? Hey, can y'all help? Sure. So I get the help. All my doctors get the help. So then it becomes a big thing, like a huge, huge thing. And
Right.
so the senator who represented the time was just not a very nice guy. He was not nice. And so he said something to me, which, us from the South, you just can't punk us. Like you can't walk up to us and be like, I
We
bet your
ain't built.
reverence. Yeah,
Hmm.
and so he said something to me that I was like, seriously? Okay, watch this. Right. And so and so and it's just, I mean, it's country boys, man. It's just how we are. Like you're not gonna, like, okay, if we're gonna fight. Okay, if I lose, I'm gonna lose fighting you. I ain't
Right.
gonna lose
You
because you
ain't finna
punk me.
just. You ain't finna
Right? Yeah,
just
you think
get
right,
over on me
right,
now.
right. I mean, it's just how we are, man. Okay, fine. Whatever. And so so I said, I'm gonna run now. And I had no. I was like, I got other things I want to do, but I said I'm gonna run because he's just not a good person. And
Yeah.
then so he stepped out, but then he put somebody else and got all this backing for this other person. But we had a very simple strategy. We knocked on doors. Like, that's
Mm.
all we did. Like we started in January, the election was in November. We knocked on 10,000 doors. And we knocked on some neighborhoods so much they were like, "Hey, don't come back. You
Listen,
got
we
our vote."
got you.
Yeah,
Okay, don't
yeah, they're
come
like,
back.
"Please, just go somewhere," right? And and so uh and so people were like, "I'm gonna vote for you because nobody's ever came to talk to me."
Yeah.
But what I learned is when you can learn a lot by looking through the threshold of somebody's door.
Mm.
Like I saw how people lived. I
Yeah.
saw in the same district were the wealthiest people in the district and also the poorest people in all of Fayetteville were in the same district. And
Mm.
so I got to see people, like they'd open their door and you get to see the kids and you get to see, growing up from the South, we see little kids walking around in diapers, right?
Hmm.
That's something that we're used to see the poverty behind the door.
Yeah.
And
It
you
probably
see.
spoke
Right.
volumes.
And these were not people, and this whole notion that there are people who are sitting at home who don't want to work because they lazy, it was not true. These were
Yeah.
people who had gone to work, who had busted their tail for 8 hours, 40 hours a week, and they were still in poverty, right?
Yeah.
They were working and still in poverty. And so, and it really got me kind of encouraged, like, man, we could do so much if we really focused on the working class, like the people
Yeah.
who get up, go to work, do their job, and they never quite have enough. They're
Yeah.
always a few dollars short. And I remember I went to this house, this brother opened the door, weed just came out, right? the whole, and I was like, I got cousins who smoke
Right.
weed, so it ain't nothing like,
I know
okay,
what this is.
yeah, exactly. But that brother had his three sons all dressed, all clean, and he was cooking. And he was like, "Hey man, I can't talk. I'm cooking, and I'm a single dad." And I said, "Hey man, you don't even have to talk to me. I got you. What's your issue?" He's like, "Man, if we could just get something for my kids, if I could just get a better school district, a better something." And I was like, "Got you." I said, "I don't know how to do that, but I promise you, man, I'm
We'll
going to do
figure
it."
it out.
But those are the things that people don't see.
Yeah.
Like they see this brother just walking down the street and thinking that he maybe just smokes weed, but this brother was actually working
A whole father.
and he was a single dad. And so the greatest thing that running for office and winning was taught me was that, man, there are people who are struggling every day and all they want is some more money to put food on the table,
Mm-hmm.
a safe place to lay their head down at night,
Yeah.
great schools for their kids, and an opportunity for their children to do better than they did.
Yeah. Yeah. And Mr. Eric, with you being, a political figure in your community and doing and actually running and winning, what are some things that people of color can do at the midterms? What can we do right now to exercise our power as citizens? What can we do?
Well, uh, this probably be another show because my viewpoint about politics right now is I think that the country has really shown us who our country is.
Yeah.
I think our country has always been racist. I think,
It's embedded in the
and
DNA of this
I
country. Yeah.
think, and I do believe, and I do believe, as King would say, that the moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice.
Yeah.
I also believe what Abraham Lincoln says, that we should move towards our better angels. Um, I also believe what Barack Obama says, that we're stumbling towards a better democracy.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that we as African Americans and Latinos, um, that we need to get together and say, what is it that we really want from this country?
Yeah.
We spend $380 billion a year as an African American community, and that's equal to what the Latino community is doing as well. And so we have enough economic power within our own, right, that we can actually change things if we
Yeah.
want those things to change.
Hmm.
But we have to make those things important to us, because the greater culture will never come save us, because we need to save ourselves. And we have to also begin to believe that we don't need the outside culture to validate what we do. That if we
Yes.
do something, that if we have a meeting, that if we have a movement, that if we have a university, that if they show up, it doesn't validate it. And if they don't show up, it doesn't invalidate it. It was validated because we believe in what we want. And so
Yes.
we have to really look at our community and say to our community, hey, this is what we want. This is how we're going to do it. And we're all in, understanding that we're not a monolithic community. There are going to be some people like, I don't do that. That ain't my gig. That ain't my bag. There are going to be some people going to say, I want to be with the other people, which is fine.
Yeah.
But we have enough people to do the great things that we need to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I just spoke with Tavares Taylor, who is a 15-year National Guard veteran. He said the same thing. Like, we have enough power economically and resource wise to create our own ecosystem. And we need to not look for the validation of the other.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we have enough brilliance on the economic side. And the other thing is that there's no need to have a leader. We need
Yeah.
multiple leaders that are cross, and as well, we need to quit wrestling with great egos and wrestle with great ideas.
Yes.
And no one has to be at the top, right?
Yes.
Everyone. So there should be medical thought leaders, multiple. There should be economic thought leaders, multiple. There should be cultural thought leaders, multiple, right?
Yes.
And so I believe that that this present administration is a horrible thing, but it's a great thing because I think the greatness of it is going to push us
To this.
for the first time maybe to trust each other, to
Yeah.
believe in each other, and to say to each other, "Look, I got you.
Yeah.
I got you." Right? And the petty stuff we don't agree with, hey, let's let's work on the education piece, the jail piece, the child care piece, the medical care. Hey, let's work on those four things, and then all the other stuff we can get to. But
Yeah.
let's not get petty on each other because you're not working on my little movement. Okay, we gonna get to it, but we got
Yeah.
other fish first.
Let's focus on let's get some main focuses
Exactly.
in
Ex-
order, and
Right.
let's push for these,
Right.
and
Right.
then we'll worry about the small stuff, widening enough basketball court
Right.
somewhere, right?
Exactly. Right. Right.
We're going to get to that, but right now
Right.
there's a health
Exactly.
disparity in the
Exactly.
Black community that
Right.
needs to be addressed. There's a mental health disparity that needs to be addressed. Why are
Exactly.
so many people depressed and
Right.
suicidal and battling schizophrenia? And
Yeah.
let's talk about those issues.
Exactly. I agree with that.
100% agree. So,
So
y'all, I have to give you a quick story about Mr. Eric. So, I stumbled upon his page. I was feeling so not motivated one day. It was a bad day. And I stumbled upon this light skinned man with this gray beard, and he was praying. And something was like, just stop and listen to him. And I stopped and I listened to him, and I was just crying tears the whole time he was praying. And so every day I'm like, I gotta go to the snot dot page to get my daily get my daily dose of prayer, okay? And then something just told me, the Spirit of God was like, hey, say thank you. You coming and getting fed every day from this man content. Say thank you. And I inboxed him. I said, thank you so much. Your prayers do so much for me. And that is how this whole thing came to be. But I want to know, how did that even become about, you jumping on Instagram and saying these anointed, God-led prayers for us? How did that happen?
it's actually it was my daughter actually. I felt called to do it, but I'm really kind of a private person. And it's really not that I feel like I'm egotistical or better or anything like that. But I always be like, oh, like who really wants to hear you, right? Because there's so many other voices, and I've been in the front. Like I've had my opportunity to be in the front. I've pastored a church. I've been a state senator. I've been, an officer in the military, and I'm an ENT doctor. I don't need to be in the front. I get my opportunity. So I was like, but I kept getting this thing. I was like, you need to do it. And social media can be a little, people cannot
It
be
can be
nice,
finicky. Yeah.
right? So then, so first I typed them, right? I'll type my prayer, and so my daughter was like, Dad, why are you typing these prayers? And I was like, because nobody sees me. And she was like, okay. So she said, just do one prayer. So I talked to the Lord and I said, God, I kept feeling like he kept tugging me and I kept like, ugh, I want to do it. And so I
You
said,
know it's the Spirit of God,
right.
because if it fights your flesh,
Yeah. And so
it's
then
him.
I said, you know what, God, I'm gonna do it, but if don't nobody look at it, I ain't doing it anymore. And I said, so my first thing was about one of my patients. It was about a patient who had cancer for 7 times. And I had to tell her she had another cancer. And she said, hey, can we pray? And I said, of course, you can pray. And so her prayer was, she said, let's bow our head. She says, Lord, do it one more time. That was her prayer. And I was like, man, I started shouting because, that prayer, I mean, that's a powerful prayer.
Yes.
She said to me, I don't have to say the long prayer. I just got to say the right prayer. And
Yeah.
she like, he's brought me through 7 other cancers. I just need him to do it one more time. And I was like, and
Ooh.
so I did that. And so my daughter called me. And my daughter was like, have you looked at your TikTok thing? And I was like, what, did I do something bad? She was like, you need to look at it. And so I looked at it and I was like, 115,000. So I called my daughter. I was like, hey, what does 115,000 mean? She says, 115,000 people have looked at it. And I was like, are you kidding me? She says, yeah. And so then I looked at I was in clinic. So I was like, I don't have time for this. So I went back to seeing patients. So at the end of the day, she called. She says, you're so ridiculous. And I said, well, what happened? She said, it's 250,000 people. And so as I was driving home, I was like, okay, God, I got it. I
God
got
said,
it.
okay, you
Got it.
said if don't nobody
Yeah.
watch
I said,
this.
so then like I started doing it and I started dancing, just playing around, just having a good time. And then I got scared. I started having like like 15,000 people. And this just on TikTok. I hadn't done Instagram at all. So I got scared and I was like, ooh, I don't want to do it anymore. So I stopped doing it. And so I was on an airplane flying from here to Atlanta to see my daughter. And the flight attendant kept saying, I know you. And I was like, you don't know me. She says, I know you. And I said, you don't know me. And so, so then she calls up another, like, and they're like pointing. I was like, she don't know me. And so we land and I'm getting off the plane. She says, you're the doctor from TikTok. And I was like, yeah. And she goes, where you been? I was like, nowhere. And she's like, well, why'd you stop? And I was like, I don't know. And she was like, you never know how many people that really touched me, and you should go back on. And then I was like, oh man. So I was walking, yes, I was walking down the airport. I was walking down RDU. I was like, okay, God, okay, I get it. I hear you. And I started doing the Instagram. And so I started like July 8th, and my prayers were real, like just not, they were, because I was trying to, I don't know what I was doing. My prayers were not great. They were just not like, I don't know what I don't know what they were. And then finally I was like, you know what? I'm just going to pray how I feel like the Lord wants me to pray. And he's like blessed it. It's like, and
Yes.
I don't have if you ask me like what's your algorithm, I don't know. I don't know. I don't do what people tell me to do. Because if people tell, well, you supposed to do these hashtags, like I don't know.
You just get on there and pray.
I do what and we went from like when I first started in July, I had 700 followers from just the ENT stuff, and then like now it's like 30 something thousand.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not me. It is nothing. It has nothing to do with Eric Mansfield. It's everything to do with God just blessing the faithfulness. I think part of it is just
Mm-hmm.
showing day. And then I think that his word doesn't come back void. So which is another model for us as work. For those who want to do work, who want to own our own business, you got to show up every day,
You have to.
even if you don't want to.
Even if you are tired, even if you don't want to, even if you are discouraged, even if you ain't seeing the results yet.
Yes. Yeah. You got to keep doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Got to keep doing it, and then it'll just happen.
Yeah. So, Mr. Eric, you are a budding social media faith influencer, dad,
Yeah.
a man of
That's-
faith.
Yeah.
How do you balance it all without burnout?
Oh,
Did
that's
you
a great
answer? You
question.
did.
I did. One, you gotta love what you do, and two, you have to put up some boundaries, right? And so the only people who have access to me 24 hours a day at any time are family
Mm-hmm.
and that's genetic and non-genetic, because I got some non-genetic family who they not related to me at all, but I love them like they're
Yeah.
family. And so what I started doing is saying no, which I was never good at, but I've gotten really sort of kind of like I'm better because I used to be like I would speak all the time, like
Mm-hmm.
every Sunday I was at somebody's church speaking, and even last year I did 12 Sundays in a row
Oh, wow.
speaking at somebody's church. And so I was so tired, and I talk about this in Bible study sometimes. I said, there's some things that God sends us. He sends us to do things. There's some things we volunteer and send ourselves. And I said the difference is that when God sends you, you're tired, but you're tired has a freshness
Yes.
and a refreshing, right? And you
Mm-hmm.
feel okay. Now, when you're tired because you went and did what you wanted to do and God didn't tell you to do it,
Because you ain't got no boundaries.
exactly? So then what happens when you're on your way back? You mad because you mad because first of all, it was raggedy because the people didn't do what they were supposed to. You got there on time, they started late, and then and then half the folk didn't show up like they were supposed to. And so now you mad because it's 10 o'clock at nighttime,
And
and
you
you like,
complaining the whole way home to nobody but your passenger seat.
right. So you sitting there all hot. You hot like, and I don't even know why I went because they wouldn't even, and then I got there and they all late and they gonna right. And then the woman said 2 minutes and they up there 15 minutes. So then you like, God, I don't even say. And then God's like, oh, you
I
gonna
ain't
ask
you
me
do
now?
that.
Right. He's like, I ain't tell you to do that. Like that. And and so then so then the car gets real quiet. You're like, well, fine. Right. If it's gonna be like
Yes.
that, okay, then I just won't say anything. So that's
Yes.
so I started saying no, and um, I think that, and I heard this from a very great friend of mine. He's a retired sergeant major from the 82nd, Michael Nixon, Sergeant Major Nixon. Sergeant Major Nixon said, "Givers have to limit how much they give, because takers never limit how much they take.
Ooh, that's so good.
And so that's the when I first heard it, I was like, oh, I never thought it that way.
Yes.
And if you look, and if all of us were listening to us right now, if they look into their personal lives,
Yeah.
people who are constantly taking, or you have to limit them, because if not, they will not only they'll suck you dry. But see, they're so insidious. Not only do they suck you dry, but once they suck you dry, they go to somebody else, and
It ain't
then
no compassion,
yeah, and then get an
nothing.
attitude. They get an attitude like, "Oh, you can't help me."
Like,
You're
that's all
like,
you got.
right, and then they're gone, right? And so so one of the barometers you should use is that the people who love you, when you set boundaries, they'll immediately go, "Oh, Jalen, I'm so sorry. I wasn't even thinking. I apologize. You know, girl, I come to you all the time because you just always have stuff ready. You can just do stuff. But man, I am so sorry. I apologize. Just, what do you need from me? Do you need
Yes.
what do you need from me?" Those people, they love you and they
Mhm.
want you to succeed and they're rooting for you. The people who are takers and you say, "Hey, I can't do that." Why can't you do it? Like,
Yes.
what's wrong with you? Like, don't you see me? I need this, and I
Yes.
come to you, and you can't even help me. Like, they don't recognize you've been having this problem for 5 years, and
Mhm.
I've been there for you for 5 years. This is the first time I've ever told you no, and now you're gonna get an attitude with a person who's already been at your side. See
Mhm.
that person? You need to be like, "God bless you. Heaven smile
Yes.
upon you." Is my prayer. Bye bye.
Exactly, and I know, and it's crazy, the people that it's hard to say no to are usually the people that you really love the most.
Yes, yes, but those people gotta love you too, right?
Yeah.
And so, and I was asked this question as a Christian, how can we set boundaries? I
Oh,
said,
yes.
I have four, I have four categories in my life. I have my family, non-genetic or genetic, right? I'll do anything for them. I will drain the Atlantic Ocean. I will bomb Mount Everest, and I'll put water in the in the Dead Sea if that's what I got to do to get them, right? I'll help them any way I can. Then there's a second group who I'm rooting for. I want them to do well, but they got little teeth, and sometimes they bite. And so I feed them with long handled spoons. I want you to win, sister, but you can't get close enough to bite me. But
Yes.
I want you to win, so I'm giving you a long handled spoon. And then there are folk who you want them to win, you're rooting for them, but they crazy. You know they crazy. They know they
They know
crazy.
that crazy.
And so, and so with those folk, I take the meat and I throw it over the fence. Okay, you get that, you get it yourself, right? But I want you to win. You, I'm rooting for you, but I ain't coming in there with you. But I'm rooting for you, right? And then there are folk who I want them to do well. I will never hurt them. I will never say anything negative about them, even if I know it, and even if they've done me wrong, and even if they've hurt me, even if they've been treacherous to me. I will never hurt them. I want them to, but they just can't succeed next to me.
Yeah.
They can eat wherever they want to. They just can't eat at my table.
Yeah.
And it's like seeing a snake out in their habitat. Like you in your house, you see the snake out there in the woods. Now
Mhm.
you see the snake in the woods, snake in his habitat.
Mhm.
I don't go out there and look at the snake. I ain't looking at the snake head to see, oh, that's a triangle head. That must
Right.
be. I don't do any of that.
I ain't even
I'm
trying to
not.
get close.
I'm not looking at the colors. Oh, that's not a coral snake. That's a cat. I don't care. Right? You in your environment. You stay in your environment. I stay in my environment. The only time you got problems with me when you come into my environment to hurt my people.
Yes.
Then you have problems. But as long as you don't do that, I will never. Even if you've done me terribly wrong, I've evolved to the point where, man, I ain't trying to hurt anybody. I'm not trying to bring any more trauma into the world. I'm not trying
Yeah.
to bring any more hurt in the world. And so even if you've hurt me, I pray that the Lord blesses you, but you just can't be blessed at my table.
Yeah.
And so you put those people in those categories.
And that's how you set your boundaries as
Hmm.
a Christian. And that, thank you for that, because I literally have been wrestling with, like, how do you set boundaries as a Christian without feeling like you're turning your back on somebody? Because that's not godly, or that's not Jesus like. Or
Right.
how do you, stand up for yourself? How do you do these
Well,
things? And
I mean, biblically, look at it. When Jesus didn't walk with a multitude, he walked with 12. When he didn't walk with 12, he walked with three. When he didn't walk with three, he walked by himself. And so he's giving you kind of a pattern. Like, hey,
Mhm.
there are those folks. And then there's this other group. And then there's this really intimate group.
Mhm.
So I just said the same thing. And then to the enemy, he said, get thee hence, get thee gone. Now to Peter, he said, get behind me, because I said, hey, Peter, I still got work to do with you. So I'm
Yeah.
still gonna hook you up.
Yeah.
But for the enemy, he said, get, and that's the same thing I'm saying. Hey, look, the snakes and the badgers and all the weird, crazy folk, y'all, okay, you in your environment. I ain't coming to your environment. Don't you ain't
Right.
gotta worry about me. Right? But then the multitude, the 12, the three, and the same thing.
Exactly. Exactly. Dr. Eric, this has been so amazing. If you could give one, no, go ahead. What you say?
I'm honored. I'm so honored to be here on your show and to really talk among vets. And, anytime you want me back, or if any vet has a question and they just want to, I'm certainly open to that. I want all of us to succeed. I'm rooting
Yes.
for every single person. It should never be a competitive atmosphere. It should always be collegial. I should always want you, because the God that we serve is so big that
Yes.
just because he's blessing you doesn't mean he won't bless me. And
Yeah.
to think that way is to think that God doesn't have enough
It
resources
limit.
to live.
Oh,
Yes, that, and we serve unlimited. And so when you live in lack, you always hoard. Whether it's hoarding emotions, whether it's hoarding love, whether it's hoarding friendships. So if you're my friend, you can't be nobody else's friend. And if I'm mad at them, you ought to be mad at them. No, baby, we grown, sweetness. We ain't in high school no more. Let's evolve.
let's
Or you can
evolve.
or you can live out of abundance.
Yes.
Means knowing that the more I give, the more God gives to me. In
Yes.
Proverbs chapter 17, he says that when you give to someone that doesn't have, it is like you are an official loan officer to God. So
Mm.
God sees you loaning money to somebody else, and God does what? He always repays his loan. But God never
Replenish it.
repays his loan just on the principal. He always adds interest.
Yes.
And his interest be stuff like, oh man, I was just asking for a hamburger. I was like, oh no, I'm gonna let you own the store. Oh, well,
Ooh.
okay. If that's how we gonna roll, then yeah, right. And once I read that, man, I was like, hey, bro, I'm not in charge of what you do with my gift, but God told me to give it to you.
Yeah.
Now, what you do with it after that is between you and him.
Yes.
Yeah, so we should
Exactly.
always be in abundance, always trying to pour into other people, because as we pour out, God will pour in. And as he pours in, man, that's when you start getting a loan that you ain't really qualified for.
Yes. Mm.
That's when you get a job that like, hey, I don't know if I'm supposed to be here. But God then he blesses you, and now you have favor, and people start coming to you to answer questions that you just last week didn't even know.
That you
So
didn't even know.
yeah, so all you got to do is pour out, and he'll pour in.
Exactly.
So I'm so honored to
Exactly.
be here, and I'm so thankful that you asked me to be here. It's been a
I am so thankful to have you here.
yeah.
I love getting men of God and women of God on the platform to just show how great he is and the work
Yes.
that he can do in our life. It's my favorite type of interview. Tell the people where they can reach you at.
Oh, well, they want to email me or Instagram. Oh, Instagram. Just go to snotdocnc. Yeah. Snotdocnc. That's me.
And
Yeah.
I will be tagging that in the show notes. So
I mean, it'll be
y'all,
small though. It's a very small.
that's fine. Whatever God lays on your heart, whatever our Father lays on your heart. Okay, so y'all, we are going to end today's episode a little different than we usually do. Mr. Eric has agreed to bless us with a prayer. So, Mr. Eric, the mic is on you.
All right, let us pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the courage, discipline, and resilience that you've instilled in those of us who have served. As we step into the world of business, remind us that we're more than the equipment that we're around, and we're bigger than the mission. Let our leadership be bold, let our vision be clear, and let our work be blessed. Open doors that no one can shut. Provide resources, wisdom, and the right connection. And let us build, but when we build, let us build not for profit, but for purpose. Not for success, but for significance. Not for wealth, but for impact. Not for business, but to build a legacy. And not just to make a living, but to make a difference. It's in Jesus' name that we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Hey y'all, it's a Six Figure Vet here. If you or any other active duty service member or veteran that you know is suffering with suicidal ideation, substance use, or mental health disorders, please tell them to call 988. The number is 988. There are trained crisis responders waiting to take their calls. You don't have to suffer in silence. Quantum